Helldivers 2 has seen its fair share of spread democracy in the short time it's been around, but it's already pulling off a feat that is so hard for games that blow up the same way that this has, truly marking it as a special game. Today I want to take a little bit of time to focus on the genius of what has happened with Helldivers, how it's gotten to this point, and hopefully how it can have a positive effect on the gaming scene at large. Drop your thoughts as we go along, do me a huge favor and drop a like on the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Helldivers 2 content, as well as a mix of a ton of other stuff here I'd love to have in the community. But for now, let's dive. All right, so first and foremost, this is almost entirely unrelated, but like, dude, that drop OST is truly one of the most epic things I can recall in gaming recently. Gets me hyped to go spread some democracy every single time I jump in. First mission on, I'm hyped. Feeling a bit fatigued after a long session and decide, just one more game? Yeah, I'm absolutely wired at 4 a.m. Truly a great addition. But anyways, Helldivers 2 launched on February 8th, just a little over a month ago, and since then, we've seen it take the gaming world by storm. As of yesterday, it's reported that the game has sold now over 8 million copies across PC and PlayStation, which is an insane feat for multiple reasons, but a couple including, number one, the game isn't on Xbox. I'd hope for the sake of Super Earth and bringing everyone together to fight the scourge that is the Terminids and Automatons, that eventually Xbox players can get in on the action, but you have 1/3 of the major platforms unable to play and buy the game, but are still pulling 8 million copies in. Number two, Helldivers 2 has predominantly relied on word-of-mouth marketing. While it is sure a Sony game, there's nowhere near the ad campaigns for this compared to like God of War or something that sold double the copies but had millions in budgeting and marketing for the advertisement of the game. There's a lot of different reasons, but like 8 million copies is so awesome to see for Arrowhead and the game at large. But what I find most fascinating, I think, about Helldivers 2 and what it's done in this first month is that the game has hardly wavered in the grand scheme of things, player count-wise. I absolutely acknowledge that Steam charts and things are not a 100% indication, but I've taken it recently to referencing them because they're a snapshot of those trends. It's nowhere near the full population player count, but it's a representation of how the scene at large can be perceived. Helldivers 2 all-time peak was just under 500,000 players on PC alone, with servers having been increased for 800,000 and up recently, still with some issues persisting in login, meaning that they are hitting that max capacity. 800,000. I don't think you realize how large in scale that is by comparison. A team of around 100 devs at Arrowhead allocated server capacity for 800,000 people. The max player count of Helldivers 1 reportedly never crossed 7,000 players. Now, I've not personally ever seen those. I didn't play Helldivers 1, but that's insane to consider. And what's most impressive to me is that it's never really let up at any point. Helldivers 2 shot into the stratosphere of popularity and continues to stay there a month plus later. And plenty have thought, okay, maybe this is a bubble game, that game that just blows up and then dies out very quickly. But that hasn't happened at all. Most recently, an example of this I can think of is Palworld being the game that blew up out of nowhere. And I do have to say this ahead of time, this is not a shot at the game or the dev team or anything at all, but rather an extreme observation of how this happens with every game that just blows up out of nowhere. You could say the same with Lethal Company, you could say the same with Among Us. Every single game that does this will eventually tail off because holding those insane numbers, those insane peaks that are well above what anybody ever anticipated is just so incredibly hard and 99.9% of the times impossible. But for reference, as an extreme, because Palworld's the one that hit the highest, Palworld broke records and peaked at over 2.1 million concurrent players on Steam alone January 26th of this year. 1 month later, that peak was 282,000 players, and today, the last 24 peak has been 123,000 players. And again, still an insane amount of players. Do not discount that at all, because yeah, it's easy to say, oh, game fell off, but 100,000 people on anything is insane. Before that reference point, month to month, Palworld lost 61% of the average player base, followed by another cut in half the following month. That happens with every game, no matter the explosive growth and size. It's just the scale of which it happens that it's different. It's not a bad thing. Again, it's just what happens. I could say the same personally in a different context for what happens with me all the time with YouTube videos. You'll make something that'll pop off, and then the ultimate challenge is to keep those people coming back day over day, and that's the big hurdle. So what's so special that I see with Helldivers 2 is that while it's not on the same scale as like Palworld that didn't peak at over 2 million players, month over month, Helldivers 2 has only lost 6% of that player average. Their average player after a month has only dropped by 16, almost 17,000 players. I don't think you understand how insanely impressive that is when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of concurrent players at peak times versus times that aren't necessarily peak, or after a window of time has passed. So how is Helldivers capturing that audience any differently? What sets them apart? Why are they beating these odds? Well, I think there's a couple of different things we can examine, and fingers crossed, these might even be able to transfer to make the gaming scene a better place. Firstly, gameplay. The game itself is just insanely fun and addictive. Personally, for me, and this could vary depending on the player, I love the fact that it's PvE. There's no real stake at it here. It's just insane amounts of fun you can have with your friends, especially playing with your friends. I feel like in a gaming industry right now that's been so focused on heavy PvP, so much one-on-one combat and things like skill-based matchmaking, that when you have stuff like this that's a fun overall environment, and then you have this gameplay loop as is, PvE with a lot of stuff to do, well, I feel like that's just incredibly refreshing. It's nice to kick back and relax on a game that you can easily convince your friends to play with you, and now especially it's beautiful because like the game's done so well for so long that it's easily got that validation where you can just be like, dude, I promise people love this, you'll enjoy it. There's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of things to level up, a lot of stuff to explore. There's enough planets to try and go and liberate, enough side missions, enough stuff to unlock in terms of your own progression, that there's a lot to do that if you're a new player, you probably won't get bored. And it's insanely easy to pick up and learn. There's not really anything that like you have to be a master at when you jump into this gameplay loop. Another thing that I think sets this apart is the narrative inclusion. It's already been described as like a sort of D&D campaign with it, and for me, I think that might be one of the things I love the most out of it. You're actively involved in where the story goes. Your amount of time, effort, and choice directly goes into what happens next in the Helldivers universe. To me, I don't think there's that many mainstream games right now that do that, in my opinion, especially in real time as Helldivers is doing it. A lot of games, you have this package story that you buy alongside a multiplayer or like a third game mode, and that's it. You play it, that's all that there is to it. There's no expansions or anything to it. It's just what you buy is what you get. Helldivers, though, is an ever-evolving narrative and something that will continue on for weeks to months, perhaps years into the future here, and however long they decide to support it. That's something that I truly love. Also, we've already seen in this month a couple of very key important updates that if players were like, okay, I did all that I wanted to do already, there's not really any reason for me to jump on. They see these updates and they're like, oh, new stuff or updates to the game that are worthwhile that I can come back and play. Things like balancing updates, content updates with like mechs, the world updates where there was just that fire tornado, other things like that. There's plenty of stuff that's been introduced already in just this month, in like a week or so, that the upkeep and love from the devs is something that's been rather apparent. And honestly, speaking of which, honest and transparent devs are a huge part of why I think this game is also different. I think that this is one of the things that I love the most for sure, because you can tell that Arrowhead are loving, that we're loving this game, and they've been open and transparent with everyone along the way. I think as a consumer, it's much more enticing and enjoyable to play a game where the devs are like actually personal, not like the brand accounts like a Wendy's or something like that are on social media trying to be this corporation that's a character, like this edgy meme lord of a company. But like actually devs that are like, no, we're with you on that. We actually understand what you mean. What I always come back to is the CEO at one point during all the issues. I don't know if you guys remember this or not. We did bring it up before, where during the peak of like the server issues and outages where people could not get into the game, the literal CEO of Arrowhead said to somebody, hey, like, I get it. Obviously we want to make money, that as a business, that's our goal. But I would say don't buy this game right now. Going on to cite like he wants it to be an enjoyable experience for everyone, and at that point there were issues that would prevent that from being the case. So like in today's gaming space where gaming is all about how much money can this company squeeze out of the consumer, where every microtransaction is $20 for a weapon skin on top of that base $70 you paid to play the game and so on, seeing a genuine, no, don't buy this just yet because we want it to be the best experience for you when you do, is just so insanely refreshing. And talking price, that's also something that's made it way more accessible as well. The price point of the game was only $40, whereas mainstream games right now are pushing that $70 price point and up. So you're paying for less than 60% of that game that otherwise would be the air quote like AAA title here with this. You could almost buy 2 Helldivers before you bought 1 Call of Duty or something like that. So a lower price point is absolutely something that's enticing to a consumer because you're not paying as much. Also, there's minimal focus on microtransactions. Yes, there are things in the game. You have those war bonds, those battle passes, and you have things in the store, but all of those things can be accessed via in-game currency that you can get. Sure, if you want to fast track it by actually paying for that stuff, but you can find all that currency in-game. The battle pass can be purchased in like 10 to 15 hours of in-game time and looting if you decide to go and actually grind that out. At that point, it costs $0, which is awesome. You get all that extra added benefit for nothing but simply putting your time into the game. Also, the war bonds, if you were to do that, those battle passes, they don't expire. So that's definitely something that I think is nice. You don't have that fear of missing out on those limited time items as they would be in other games. So all of that said, that's the stuff that I'm personally seeing, and having played Helldivers quite a bit over the last month here since it launched, that's what I see makes this so special and how it's capturing lightning in a bottle. It's a true full package experience done in a very different way in some aspects, and as a result, it's still killing it a month and a week later at this point. And I hope that this truly does continue on well out into the future as a game that is still crushing it. So the next question is, can this positively impact the gaming industry? Now, I'm an optimist. I know that some videos in the last year and a half or so would probably make you think otherwise, but as an optimist, I would very much so hope that this is eye-opening for the industry. For people who care about sales and the longevity of games, it just comes down to making a good game and truly caring about the product, community, and the future of the game long-term. I feel like live service now for a long time has just been this way to milk things, and ultimately there's no way around that, but just a way to continue to get revenue at all points of the year instead of just like, oh, hey, we're launching a game in the fall, we're going to add an expansion or two throughout the year, and you'll see sales numbers spike at that point. Those days are kind of long gone with live service at this point, but with Helldivers 2, while it's kind of the same in name, there's meaning and innovation behind the way Helldivers has done live service thus far, and I'm assuming they'll continue to do in the future. So fingers crossed, maybe this does spark a little bit of interest to change the ways of the corporations out there. We'll see if that happens, but for the time being, Helldivers 2 is still a masterpiece a month and some change later. So that said, just wanted to talk about Helldivers because like there's not really many guides I can make right now at this point. There's not many news or updates that are super pressing, but I just wanted to talk about it because I am still enjoying Helldivers. Hopefully you guys are as well. But that said, that is going to wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts down below. Are you guys loving Helldivers? Not so much. Have you been a holdout and not checked it out yet? If so, get in there. The fight for Super Earth needs you. But let me know your thoughts down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so it's a single thing regarding all things Helldivers 2, other FPS content. We got a lot in store for you upcoming, so I'd love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.